You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. It's season 2, episode 80. The Cubs, they just couldn't finish the race. Don't forget to listen, download, review. Most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on the socials, Fly the W on Twitter, Instagram, and of course on Facebook. Also, you can email us at flythew670@gmail.com. Crawly, happy Thursday. How you doing?
Doing good, man. Just enjoying baseball. This for me is a time of year where I'm working on my man cave. So I just got back from the framer, got some exciting pieces framed. So more stuff is going up. I got all sorts of fun things going on here.
Well, I saw on Twitter you're looking to move a little bit of stuff, huh?
Yeah,
a man cave yard sale, if you will, or what?
Yeah, you just can't keep. I wish, if I would have won that $1 billion lotto, I could keep everything. I mean, you got to remember, I've been collecting for like 30 years. So at a point in time, everything can't stay. So yeah, I got some interesting stuff that I'm going to be kind of just tweeting out there at Crawly's Cubs. If people are interested and want to increase their memorabilia collection, my loss is your gain. So, I got some phenomenal new pieces in though, and I'm just excited. So like I said,
are you going to show them off next week maybe, or what?
I could always show some things off. Yeah, absolutely. I got some, like I said, there's some pretty fun stuff here so far, but, like I said, for me in the off season, AFL, postseason baseball, Las Ligas, and doing, working on this Cubs cave, which is getting near completion. So having fun.
We're gonna have to have a live. Fly the W remote from the Crawly man cave once it's done.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot to see here.
All right, fantastic. All right, Crawly, we've been reviewing the 23 Cubs season, and we've got one part to go, and unfortunately, that is the September collapse of the Cubs.
Yeah, we talked about April and May, and we talked about how awesome June and July was, and August, the best of them all. Well, September wasn't the worst month statistically. That would have been May, but it was the most painful month of the season. I want to wish a happy birthday to Mitch Rosen, the man who gave us the blessing to do this, but I was wondering if Mitch was going to give me hazard pay going through all of this. It was like post-traumatic stress disorder. It was awful. There was plenty of buzz as the Cubs ended August with a record of 18-9. And on August 26th, the Cubs called up 2021 first-round draft pick Jordan Wicks to the majors, and he won his first start of that same day. So first up for the Cubs was a road trip to Cincinnati to take on the Reds in a 4-game series to start out September Labor Day weekend. The Cubs would play a doubleheader on Friday to make up for the game that was rained out in April. Top Cubs prospect Alexander Canario was called up for the doubleheader, but he didn't get in any of the 4 games. It'd be a while before he'd get the chance to see him play. Game 1 went according to plan as Wicks made his second start and pitched 5 innings, gave up 1 run. Cody Bellinger, Seiya Suzuki, and Ian Happ all went deep in the Cubs' 6-2 win. The problem, Dustin, was the nightcap. The Cubs were leading 2-1 in the 9th inning with Adbert Alzolay on the mound, who had been so good all season. He is going to blow the save. That was his 3rd blown save of the season and his 2nd in a week. Now, the second one really wasn't his fault because it was Leiter who loaded the bases and then he just hit a guy. You know what I mean? There was wasn't like 100% him, but this was on Alzolay. And so after this blown save, he would not pitch again for another week. He pitched 2 games in Arizona before finishing the season on the IL with a right forearm strain. And Dustin, we're nervous because usually after, a guy blows a game, you want to get him right back in, right away, kind of get the stink off. And the next day the Cubs had that opportunity and they didn't go with him. And I was like, okay, well, that's curious. Then he doesn't pitch for a week. He pitches 2 games a week later, and then he goes on the IL. That was so frustrating because Adbert had such an amazing season. He solidified the closer's role. He had 7 holds and was 22 out of 25 save opportunities.
It's pretty damn good for a guy who you didn't have, big expectations for.
No. And again, out of those, he only blew 3 saves and 2 of them were right before he went on the IL. So, I mean, the guy was just lights out. After splitting the first 2 games of the doubleheader on Friday, the Cubs were leading 1-0 behind 8 shutout innings by Javier Assad. But this time it was Mark Leiter's turn to blow the save, and the Cubs were walked off for the 2nd game in a row, losing 2-1. The Cubs would pound the Reds 15-7 to split the series before heading home for a 3-game set against the Giants. If you remember that last week when Jed was talking both before the end of the season and right after the end of the season, he called that series against the Giants one of the best of the season. They pitched well, hit well, ran the bases well. Justin Steele and Jordan Wicks both had strong starts. And on September 6th, Dustin, the Cubs were 1.5 games back of the Brewers for first place. They had a 92.6% chance of making the postseason.
92.6. That's almost for sure.
Yeah, it's literally you'd bet the whole farm on that. There's no doubt about it. But then the Arizona Diamondbacks came to Wrigley for a 4-game series, and the Cubs hadn't seen the Snakes all season. On Friday, they lost 6-2 as Assad and Keegan Thompson both struggled. The Cubs would lose on Saturday 1-0 with Tyone, the tough luck loser, and Zach Gallen pitching his first career 9-inning shutout.
That was an unbelievable performance. I remember that game.
Yeah, the Cubs would lose on Sunday 3-2 in extra innings as the D-backs would score 2 in the 10th off Daniel Palencia. The Cubs would salvage the finale 5-2 as Mark Grace and Sean Dunston, two guys, Dustin, that we loved growing up, inducted into the Cubs Hall of Fame. I was there that day, and how much fun that was to finally see a victory and see those guys. That was just, one of the very few last times I was able to be happy at Wrigley Field. Then came the road trip from hell. The Cubs headed to Colorado to face the last place Rockies, a bunch of weak pitchers. The Cubs called up their number one prospect, Pete Crow Armstrong, to show off his amazing defense in that large outfield in Coors Field. The series was a disaster. In the first game, Wicks pitched well. Going into the 7th, the Cubs were leading 3-1, but Jose Cuas, who was acquired in a trade for Nelson Velasquez, gave up 3 to the Rockies, and the Cubs were trailing 4-3 in the 9th before Yan Gomes hit a 2-run single in the top of the inning, and the Cubs won that one 5-4. But they would lose the next 2 games, and in a preview of what we would see the entire rest of the month, the games all featured poor bullpen performances, uncharacteristic defensive errors, bad base running, and untimely hitting. After losing 2 of 3 to the Rockies, they're going to head to Arizona for a 3-game series, and they got swept by the Snakes. In game 1, Justin Steele gave up 6 runs, both, Dustin, on 3-run homers with 2 outs.
Yeah, it was a bad night, a bad day for him to have his real lone, if you will, clunker of the season, right? And again, the bad luck, both of those with 2 outs.
Right. And then in game 2, that was a particularly brutal game as that went into extra innings, and the Cubs scored 1 run in the 10th, 1 in the 11th, and 1 in the 13th. But the Diamondbacks came back each time, and they each time the Cubs scored before walking it off in the 13th. The Cubs lost game 3 as Jordan Wicks had his worst start. He gave up 3 runs in the first, and they would go on to lose 6-2, completing the sweep for Arizona. So, you have this abysmal road trip, and now the Cubs are headed home for a 3-game set against the Pirates. The Cubs were 9-1 against the Pirates at this point in the season, and it looked like the trend would continue when the Cubs took game 1, 14-1. Alexander Canario, who was called up on August 1st and only had 1 at-bat over 17 games, finally got the start. And what did he do? He went 2 for 4 with an RBI double, a grand slam. He drove in 5 runs, Dustin. But guess what? He would not start either of the next 2 games after
I didn't understand that at all. It's mind-blowing to me.
Right. And not only that, Dustin, not only did he not play the rest of the series, he only played 1 more complete game where he got all of his at-bats on September 30th when the season's basically done.
Yep.
Canario was not in the lineup the next day when Justin Steele gave up 6 runs to the Buccos, ending any shot he had at the Cy Young. Mark Leiter also gave up 3 runs, and the Cubs lost 13-7. The rubber match was not close. In the end, the bullpens gave up 1 in the 7th, 2 in the 8th, 3 in the 9th. The Cubs would lose 8-6. Pittsburgh takes the series. David Ross got into a little trouble in a postgame interview when he made honest comments about how the Pirates were a bad team that the Cubs should not have lost to.
Right.
And they did.
Yep, and they did. They did indeed. That was really disappointing. It was one of those, was it 9 games at home, I think? And I think we thought they could only lose 2 and be okay. So they've already lost the 2.
Right. And then all of a sudden you had the Rockies come in. The Cubs had now lost 4 series in a row since that San Francisco series. And, they're going to sit there and they're going to sweep the Rockies, took care of business. And that was the final weekend of games at Wrigley Field. There would be no more games after Wrigley. So the first 2 games were blowouts that the Cubs won against Colorado. And the last game was close. Patrick Wisdom hit a 2-run homer in the 6th that gave the Cubs the 4-3 win. And we all got to say goodbye to Wrigley. The Cubs, though, were still in a wild card spot to start the last week of the season. Philly, by that point, had the first wild card spot. But Arizona, the Marlins, the Reds, and the Cubs were all fighting for the final 2 wild card spots. After giving up 6 runs in his last 2 starts, Justin Steele got the ball against the Atlanta Braves. The Cubs offense gave the Cubs a 6-0 lead going into the top of the 6th. But after that top of the 6th, the Braves start to come back. They scored 3 in the 6th, 2 in the 7th. And then with runners at 2nd and 3rd and 2 outs in the 8th inning, Drew Smyly threw a pitch to Sean Murphy, who hit a slicing ball to Seiya Suzuki, who lost the ball in the lights. It allowed the 2 runs to score, and the Braves, down 6-0, would come from behind to win this one 7-6. Everyone's always going to remember that one when it comes to the collapse. I'm hoping that by kind of going over some of these, people realize it wasn't just that. But that one, Dustin, that one was one that was just so extra painful because it was right there. And I don't know if they would have won it in the 9th inning where we're talking about bullpen woes.
Right.
But that was just, it's just so devastating, and you just didn't want it to happen to Seiya. He's such a nice guy. He takes these things so hard. It was so frustrating, especially since he was doing so well in August and September after he was benched for 4 games.
Yeah, it was a low blow, kick below the belt, whatever term you want to use. Obviously, you're right. He carried the team offensively. The couple of days off that manager David Ross gave him obviously helped out quite a bit, and it was pretty devastating. It made me really dislike the Braves even more. And I was happy that the Braves were eliminated in the postseason.
Absolutely. The Cubs once again had a lead. They had a 3-1 lead going into the 7th against the Braves, but the Braves scored 1 in the 7th and 1 in the 8th to tie the game. The Cubs scored 1 in the 9th to take a 4-3 lead, but they couldn't hold on. Atlanta scores 1 in the bottom of the 9th. The Cubs score 1 in the 10th, and they couldn't hold on to that either. Ronald Acuna hit an RBI single. The man-for-man scores to tie the game at 5. Then he steals his 70th base to become the first ever 40 home run, 70 RBI guy. And in the middle of an extra inning game in a wild card race, they stop the game to play a video montage. And then Ozzie Albies, the next batter, once the little montage and everything's over, hits a walk-off single to give the Braves a 6-5 victory. So that's another game that the Cubs had multiple opportunities to win and just couldn't. And again, you know what? I was irritated about the montage after it happened, but after he sat there and he took all the adulation to get all the love from the fans, and then when he lost to the Phillies and then ran into the bus and hid, I lost all respect for that guy. Forget it.
Yeah, but I can't blame it all on him. I mean, the organization was obviously involved, right? I mean, he didn't put the montage together. I'm guessing he didn't say, okay, and he took that base out like somebody was going to come run on the field and steal it away from him. I mean, I've never seen a guy rip a base out like that. It was wild. It was absolutely wild. And there's no doubt that it could have thrown off the Cubs pitcher at that point.
Right. Well, the Cubs had now lost 2 out of 3, and then Marcus Stroman made his second start since coming off the IL. He was tagged for 4 runs in 2 innings. The Cubs never came close in that one. They swept the series. The Cubs' postseason chances were still alive, limping into the last series of the season against the Brewers. Now they needed some help if they were going to have a legitimate chance to make the postseason. But all that talk ended on Friday night. The Cubs were down 3-0 to Milwaukee, but scored 2 in the 8th. Ian Happ hit a solo home run in the 9th, but the Cubs couldn't score against the rookie making his debut in the 10th, and Carlos Santana would walk it out with a single. The Cubs would lose 4-3. Dustin, it was so frustrating because Milwaukee kept their lineup pretty much intact, but all the pitchers that they pitched that night were garbage. They were handing that to the Cubs, and the Cubs offense couldn't
take advantage of it. Right. They couldn't take advantage of it. I mean, the only good news there is that just like the Braves, that the Brewers were quickly dismantled and kicked out of the postseason. They only ended up playing 3 more games than the Cubs. So congratulations, Brewers.
Right. And then, the Cubs would win the next night 10-6, but it didn't matter as they were eliminated when the Marlins beat the Pirates to punch their ticket to the postseason. The Cubs lost the last game of the season, letting a bunch of rookies and guys that are probably not going to be back this season start. Justin Steele got the scratch. They went for a bullpen game, and that was the season. The Cubs finished with a record of 83-79, second behind the Brewers, but 9 games back. After sweeping the Giants on September 6th, we talked about this, 12 games over 500. That was the high point of the season. After that game, the Cubs went 7-15 and lost 6 of the last 7 series.
Oh gosh, if you just don't lose, if you lose maybe 4 of the last 7, you're in the postseason.
Right. And you look here, a lot of things went wrong, but I mean, basically, Dustin, they went from 10 under to 12 over, but in doing so, they had their pedal on the gas for a long time, and they just ran out of gas. For the month of September, Cody Bellinger, who had hitting like 370, 400 all season, was hitting 275. Mike Tauchman hit 258 for the month of September. Yan Gomes, 233. How about Nico, 219 in September? And then the lowest, Dansby Swanson hitting .162 in the month of September.
Yeah, he's going to have to take some days off next year. I like that he thinks you got to play every day, but the playing every day did not do him a whole hell of a lot of good. And when you're getting the kind of money he's getting and batting where he's batting, you can't bat 162.
And again, the frustration I had is that, you had a guy that you were playing every day in Christopher Morel anyway. Okay, give Dansby the day off. Nico, you go to short. Chris takes second. Okay, Nico, you take the day off. Morel plays second. You had everything you could have done. And again, why Canario we never got to see what the guy could do or even try to get PCA going. Wasn't like Tauchman was doing much anything. It never made any sense to me. Pitching wise, you had Stroman started 2 games with an ERA of 9. Justin Steele started 2 games with an ERA of 9.72, and Jordan Wicks started 2 games with an ERA of 10.57 at the end. None of that. I mean, like I said, Steele probably was out of gas at that point. Marcus was injured. And, I think we saw that yesterday, if you were watching the ALCS, when you have a guy coming in like Max Scherzer,
yep,
who was injured and now he's coming back. You don't have a AAA to ramp up. These guys have all been playing. All these hitters have been playing, like postseason baseball, and all of a sudden you come in and you got rust on you. You're just going to get hit around, yep. And that's what happened there. Jordan Wicks, I mean, he did a lot for them, and that was a lot to expect out of a 2021 draft pick to come in and get thrown right in that middle of that pennant chase. Another guy throwing more than he'd ever thrown before. And then you had Boxberger, Fulmer, and Alzolay all injured. We're going to have some news about Fulmer later. Mark Leiter lost his forkball. That was his out pitch, and that's what made him effective against righties and lefties. And he was useless. And basically, Ross had to rely on Jose Cuas, Julian Merriweather, Daniel Palencia, and Drew Smiley nearly every single day. Those guys had to have been completely burned out. And that's why the Cubs ended up where they did. It was a fun season, and it just stinks that the last memories that we have of them aren't that pleasant because September was just brutal.
Yeah, September was brutal, but as they say, come March, they'll sing the national anthem, and early April over at Wrigley Field, and it'll be a whole new opportunity. This is the Fly the W670 podcast. It's season 2. It's episode 80. The Cubs couldn't finish the race. In this segment, Crawly interviews Jim Callis, senior writer from MLB Pipeline, to talk Cubs prospects in the AFL, also known as the Arizona Fall League.
Joining me on the Fly the W podcast, Cub fans, you recognize him from Marquee Network, The Road to Wrigley. He is the senior writer for MLB Pipeline. Jim Callis, how you doing today, Jim?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Paul?
I'm doing great, man. I'm enjoying this Arizona fall ball, and watching the postseason. For me, there's never enough baseball. I don't care about other sports, so to me, it gives me something to watch and enjoy. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm sure you're watching plenty of fall ball as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny. Like I was out there for the first week of the season, And I'll go back for the Fall Stars game and the championship game and the last week of the regular season in between. But I always enjoyed being there in October, watching Arizona Fall League games. And while I'm watching Arizona Fall League games, I'm also watching, whether it's on my phone or my computer or whatever, the playoff games going on at the same time. So, like, you're right. There is a lot going on. But, I tell people all the time, Arizona Fall League, it's the best. Like, my two favorite events are the Arizona Fall League, the College World Series. And just think of all the best parts of spring training without any of the less best parts. You don't have to fight for parking. You don't have to pay a lot for tickets. Like, you have the run in the ballpark. The Arizona Fall League is just tremendous. I love it every year.
Yeah, and for our listeners that don't know, it started on October 2nd and it runs through November 9th. And what happens is all 30 teams in baseball send some of their top prospects to Arizona to play on one of 6 teams. Now, Jim, maybe you could tell our listeners what goes in the decision process of which prospects they're going to send to the AFL. So, like, for example, why would, say, you take, James Triantos over, say, Matt Shaw?
I mean, it just depends. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go in for like the hitters usually stand out more than the pitchers because if you stay healthy as a pitcher, you probably hit your innings limit during the years, and they're not going to send. Cade Horton pitched the 80 or 90 innings the Cubs wanted to pitch. So they're not going to send him there. For position players, I think honestly part of it might have been, and I'm speculating a little bit here with Triantos versus Shaw. Triantos missed the beginning of the year with a meniscus. Shaw was obviously playing in Maryland. He hadn't been drafted yet. Came in, played a lot. When you factor in how long the minor league season goes with the college season, Matt Shaw's probably already played more games this year than he's probably played in just about his whole life, certainly at a higher level. And whereas Triantos missed, I think can't remember, it was 4 or 6 weeks at the beginning of the season. So you're making up for lost at bat. I mean, you see a lot of same themes. You see guys making up for lost time. I mean, the Cubs hitters, you got Alcantara, who missed time during the season. You have Christian Franklin, who missed all last year. So you see that. You see guys there to work on specific things. The pitchers tend to be more of a random lot. A lot of the teams, it's crazy because every team you mentioned, Paul, there's 5 major league organizations that feed every Arizona Fall League team. And the Cubs are always in Mesa because their training base is in Mesa and they play at Sloan Park. But in the past, every team sent 4 pitchers. So that would be 20 pitchers. And we still ran out of pitchers at times last year. Like, the pitchers usually on a very set schedule. It's not like the manager's like, oh, who am I going to bring in? I got this 20-man bullpen. It's like these pitchers are pitching on this day and these pitchers are pitching on the next day and so on. But so this year, every team sent 5 pitchers. And it's generally, if there's 5 teams, you're playing 6 games most weeks. Every team sends a starter. One team will send 2. And then there's a bunch of usually pretty random relief pitchers as well.
Right. And like you said, the Solar Sox are in Mesa, which, anyone that's been out to, go to Sloan Park, it's just such a beautiful facility. But what does an average day look like for a prospect while they're in the AFL?
I think it's somewhat relaxing. I mean, it's pretty hot at the beginning of the season. It starts to cool off. But they switched the game times. Like, game times in the past were either 12:30 or 6:30. And then I guess the big league clubs in general were like, you know what, that's a pretty quick turnaround. If you're getting out of the ballpark, or, especially if you're on the road and you have to drive back to your place. So now it's 2:30 and 6:30 are the game times. You play 1 game a week. Yeah, it's not very taxing because nobody really plays every day. Like, even like you'll have guys who are kind of the priority players in specific position, and that plays into it too. Like, the Cubs can't just say, hey, we want players A, B, and C to come, and they're going to hit 3rd, 5th, and 7th in the lineup and play these positions. You got to make 5 teams happy. So the teams kind of divide up who gets what priority at what position type of thing. And so you'll have guys like Triantos who are playing 4 days a week, usually out of 6. The catchers, usually you have 3 catchers on a roster. They pretty much divide it up. Everybody plays 2 games. Like I said, the pitchers are kind of on a schedule. Carter Trice is there. I think he's still there, who they drafted this year out of NC State, but he's only played once or twice. I don't know if they officially have taxi squads going, but they have some players who are only officially on the roster like Wednesdays and Saturdays. But and you'll take infield MVP, but not every day. So I mean, I guess it depends on your manager, but like it's not a very taxing day. And you're not going to be in the lineup. I mean, I'm sure a lot of these guys one hand they're tired, but a lot of these guys would like to play every day, but you're not grinding out like you are in the minor leagues. Like you at most, there might be like Nelson Velasquez when he was on the Cubs a couple of years ago. Mesa had some outfield injuries, so Nelson Velasquez was playing like every day. But most guys will max out around 20 games in a 5-week schedule.
Nice. And it wasn't the greatest start for the Solar Sox so far, but Mesa did have an exciting 10-8 come from behind victory last night, and they were led by two of the Cubs' top prospects in the AFL. Let's start first with James Triantos. He went 4 for 6 with 3 RBIs and has been one of the best hitters in the AFL. Got a 455 average, 1.359 OPS, 6 extra base hits, and 11 RBIs. He looks locked in, and I think sometimes Triantos gets lost in the shuffle a little bit because he came right out of high school and he was so young. But, to see his development from Myrtle Beach to South Bend and now in the AFL, he's a player I think that Cub fans should get really excited about.
He's really intriguing. I think there's a lot of upside there, and there's also some question marks with him too. And I think you're right. I do think he gets lost in the shuffle behind guys like PCA and Cade Horton and Alcantara, who's out there as well. And on one hand, I think probably if you look at the whole Cub system, the two guys with the best bat-to-ball skills are Triantos and Moises Ballesteros. Like, he can just hit. I want to say I think I saw him play twice when I was out in Arizona the first week, and he had 4 or 5 hits in the 2 games. The guy just really, really hits. I think the 2 questions with him, and they could go, there's a wide range of possibilities, are A, how much power is he going to have? And B, where is he going to play defensively? He does need to get stronger. He is hitting the ball harder. I do think he's a really gifted hitter. I do think more power will come than he has shown. But as you mentioned, he's really young. He, reclassified. So when they drafted him in the 2nd round in 21, if he hadn't reclassified, which he did with the intent of going to North Carolina, University of North Carolina, and playing a year early, he would have been a 2022 draftee. Like, he's really young for his experience level in pro ball. I think the bigger question, and the power does play into how well he's going to profile, is where do you play him on the diamond? He played third base in 2022, Paul, and he was not very good. I mean, I had pro scouts in our organization just killing him, saying he looked terrible at third base. So he's played second base most of this year. One of the games I saw him, he looked awful. He made 3 bad plays at second base where he failed to execute plays properly. They weren't all errors. He did not look good. Like the game, I saw him in Game of Mason. I saw him on the road. Maybe it's Salt River. I can't remember. Maybe I was at Mesa twice. I don't know. It all runs together. But anyway, and I'm not going to bury a guy on one look because I realize I may have saw him on a bad day, but he did not look good at second base one of the days I saw him. I mean, he looked noticeably not good. And he also didn't run the bases real well. It was weird. It was not the best look at him from a non-hitting perspective. They've played him some in center field, during the season. I don't know that I really think he's quick enough to be a center fielder, and it's kind of a moot point because you have PCA. He's not going to play center field for the Cubs because they have Pete Crow Armstrong. And even if he stays in the infield, even if he gets better defensively at second, you've got Swanson at short, you've got Nico Horner at second, you got Matt Shaw, who you mentioned coming, who's either going to wind up at third or maybe he goes to second. Nico goes over to third. Even if he improves, I don't think he's dislodging any of those players from those positions. So I think he might wind up as a left fielder in the long run, in which case he is going to have to hit for more power. But all that said, I do like him a lot. I do think he flies under the radar. If you told me that he busted out next year and emerged as one of the best pure hitters in minor league baseball and a top 100 prospect, I could certainly see that. I mean, he can really, really hit. And he's got to be what? Is he 20 now? Tops?
Yeah, he's 20. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not even sure he's 20. He might be 19, but he did turn 20 recently. But yeah, I mean, he's just so young. So I think better days are ahead for James Triantos.
Now, again, not flying under the radar is Kevin Alcantara, who went 2 for 4 with 4 RBIs last night. He hit the walk-off home run for the Solar Sox. He started off a little bit slow, but he is picking it up in the last week or so. What are your initial thoughts on Alcantara? Because, I mean, he looks so wiry. He reminds me a little bit of I don't know. I keep thinking of Alfonso Soriano or something as far as his body type.
He is wiry, and it's funny. He's kind of like the international version of Triantos because when the Yankees signed him back then, pre-pandemic, July 2 was the day players were eligible to sign. And he wasn't, and you had to be 16. He didn't turn 16 till mid-July. So he signed in 2018. So this is his 6th year in pro ball. And he's 21 years old, like, age 21 season. He turned 22 in mid-July. But like, if you look at baseball, everybody considers, July 1, the midpoint baseball age. He's 21. And so he's been around he's 6'6", listed at 188. Maybe he's put on a little weight, but I mean, that looks, like you said, accurate. I mean, he's still very lean, and he's just like so athletic and kind of graceful looking, and he could have solid tools across the board. And I mean, I've said this a few times on the Marquee broadcast. Pete Crow Armstrong is a better prospect than Kevin Alcantara, but Alcantara might have a higher ceiling. Like, I don't know that he's necessarily going to get all the way there. Not every player gets all the way to his ceiling, but I think he's got more power. I think he's pretty much as quick as PCA, and a chance to be a comparable hitter. So I think he's got a higher offensive ceiling than PCA. And it's just, again, I did our Yankees list before, and I do our Cubs list. So I've had him on my lists forever. And it feels like, man, this guy's been around forever. And like I said, he has. He's been on either our Yankees or our Cubs list for 6 years. And he still was seasonal age 21 this year. So, he had some, I think it was leg injuries, if I remember correctly, and missed some time during the regular season. So they're just making up for some lost time. And I assume we'll see both him and Triantos in AA to start next season would be the logical assumption on those guys. And roughly the pitching isn't, the hitting's ahead of the pitching, but roughly I think people consider the AFL comparable to AA baseball, like roughly in terms of level of play. And since both Alcantara and Triantos, I think they both played briefly in AA, but not a lot. It's getting a little more exposure to that quality of pitching heading into next year.
You're talking about the pitching. The Cubs have a couple pitchers out there: Chris Karchmer and Adam Lasky and Jose Romero and Tyler Santana. Is there anyone of those guys that really kind of stand out to you as far as just kind of really having some good stuff that maybe Cub fans wouldn't be very familiar with, but have breakout potential?
Yeah, I mean, none of those guys, like I said, there aren't that many top pitching prospects in the league. Like, there's 2 guys on our overall top 100 prospects list who are in the league, and that pitching wise, and that's Jackson Jobe of the Tigers and Ricky Tiedemann of the Blue Jays. And both those guys had injury. Like, you have to thread this, like, an even finer line with the pitchers where they were hurt, but it wasn't so serious that they're back and healthy and ready to pitch in the fall league, which is both those guys. I think the Cubs' best pitching prospect in the AFL is probably Jose Romero. Like, he's a guy who I didn't know a lot about before he went to AFL. I think he signed for $10,000 out of Venezuela. And he's a reliever. It's 93, 95. It's a solid slider. He had a pretty good year in single A this year, but he's not super close to the big leagues. But he's probably the best of their 5 arms they have out there in Arizona.
Nice. Now, the AFL is always a place where they start to kind of mess around and tinker with the rules. And this year's no exception. They are going to have some rule changes coming. One of the things is they're obviously playing with the pitch clock still. That's something. But to me, like, it looks like they're shaving some time. Is that right?
I want to say, I'm going to look this up on my computer as we talk here. I want to say it's 18 seconds with runners on base and 15 seconds with the bases empty. Yeah.
All right.
And they played around with it, I guess, in the minor leagues over the last 2 or 3 years. And everybody the Arizona Fall League has a million nicknames. But one of them is like baseball's fishing school, but it's also like baseball's laboratory too. Like, they've tested stuff, ABS, which we're going to see at some point in the big leagues. They've tested that there. They've tested pre-tacked balls there. I don't know if we're going to get that in the big leagues. They tested instant replay there before they used it. They test everything there. But yeah, I think they're trying to find this, like as much as everybody loves the pitch clock this year, and I think it's been a pretty universal success. I think if they could even tighten it up, like you said, Paul, and shave even a little more time off the games, people like that. And I'll say again, it's when you go to games out there, it's not noticeable. Even the 15 seconds without runner on base, that seems quick. Guys just get used to it. Like when everybody was kind of gnashing their teeth, oh, pitch clock, this is going to be terrible. Players hate it. Pitch clock, they've been using the fall league forever. And every year it'd be the same thing. Before they used it in the minors, take guys like a week. You have a few pitch clock violations first week, and then everybody got used to it. I remember, this was a while ago, Carl Crawford was inducted into the Arizona Fall League Hall of Fame, and we had him on a broadcast. And I think they must have been testing instant replay because it was a year where we were doing a lot of broadcasts. And you obviously have to have cameras there to do instant replay. And Carl Crawford was in the booth, and it was funny. Sometimes, Paul, when you get a guy in the booth, like a guest in the booth during the game, like the inning goes real quick, and you're like, man, like we barely got to talk to him. This was the opposite. We had a long inning, and Carl Crawford was probably like thinking that one of these guys are going to let me out of here. But we talked about the pitch clock, and Carl Crawford, who had never seen the pitch clock before, thought it was the best thing in the world. He's like, this is great. We need this in the big leagues now. It might have been 6-7 years ago. It was a long time ago. But so they'll play with it. Like I said, it's 15-18, and if what is it, 15-20 in the big leagues? Is that
15-20? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they're trying to see if if 18 seems like it works okay, then we might try 18 in the big leagues with runners on base.
It's funny. I'm part of a charitable group called Club 400, and we had Joe Madden out for an event for Special Olympics to raise some money. And he was asked about the rule changes, and he said, at first I did not want the pitch clock. Now I think it's the best thing, but I'd still get rid of all the other new rules. I
don't disagree with a lot of that. Like the thing about the pitch clock too is that it's tweaked, but there was a rule on the books forever that you had to deliver a pitch within 20 seconds. So essentially, the pitch clock is basically enforcing the rules in the book. It wasn't that rule just got out of hand. I still despise the runner on second base. I hate that rule. It's the amount of games that went past 11 innings at the big league level are so look, the minor leagues is developmental. If you want to do whatever or call games a tie after 11 innings in minor leagues, fine. I hate the runner on second base rule. I will never like it. I think it's a terrible way to decide games. And I just think it sends a message that like last time I checked, Paul, when you go to a big league game, are you forced to stay at the game the whole game? Is anybody compelling you to stay there? If you've decided you've had enough baseball, you can leave. You can leave the game. We don't need to gimmick it up. We've kept it out of the postseason. I hope that remains. But it's not like we have this slew of 15-inning games. And now you got me going on a rant. But
it's okay.
Since we've introduced this rule, Paul, I still seem to see a lot of position players pitching. Even though we have 13 pitchers on every roster, this hasn't eradicated the travesty of position players pitching. So I don't even think the rule really does that much. So anyway, but I don't disagree with Joe Madden.
I was going to ask you about this blocking bases was something that I was kind of looking at too. We know the rule as far as catchers are concerned, but now it's looking like no base blocking on the other bases as well. Yeah,
I'll be honest. I didn't see the week I was there. I didn't see that called. I saw, and I wasn't necessarily watching to say, oh, are the infielders really giving the runner a lane to second base on the steal? But yeah, the idea is that you can't, much like it's similar, I guess, to what they have at the plate, where you have to give the runner a lane to the plate. You theoretically have to give a runner a lane to the bit. You can't just put your knee down in front of the bag and make the guy slide into you and then try to find his way onto the base.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, Jim,
and I think that's good for safety too, because with all the head first slides, I think it's or even feet first awkward slides, it theoretically prevents injuries. I don't have a problem with that one. I think it's. But like I said, I'm not claiming I talked to every player, but nobody was really talking about it, and I haven't noticed it. While watching a game, I didn't notice anything like, oh, geez, it looks like the guy's out of the way of the base. It just seems like that part seems baseball is normal.
Right. And for anyone that's interested in the AFL and watching it, if you are a subscriber to the MLB Network, they do have some games, and they'll definitely have the Home Run Derby on Saturday, November 4th, and the Fall Stars game, the All-Star game version of the AFL on Sunday, November 5th at 5 p.m. Central Time. And, Jim,
let me throw in one thing real quick. I was going to say, a lot of the games are streaming. If you just go to our website at MLB Pipeline or the Fall League's website, they have pixel out cameras, and I don't know if they're streaming every game, but they're streaming a lot of the games. and they have announcers at them, like sometimes 2. I don't know if they ever do 3 games a day, but they're streaming a lot of games. So even aside from MLB Network, if you like, especially once the postseason ends, if you're like, oh my God, I need some baseball, or we have an off day, like we had 2 off days between the division series and the championship series, you could find baseball on there. So and that part's free too.
Yeah, that is amazing. And Jim, I was talking to you before we jumped on this, and I was telling you one of my favorite things to do. I'm a big, I'm watching Marquee 24/7 at my house, and the road to Wrigley, with you and Lance Brozdowski and Elise Medeker. I mean, I didn't know what to expect, and it is really. I feel like it's given me more love for the minor league system, just keeps me more attuned to what's going on. How fun is it to do that show where you have that whip around style and everything's just kind of going crazy and you're focusing in on certain at bats?
Yeah, no, that show is so much fun. I think it was a brainchild of a producer named Mike Norman, and I'm amazed that nobody's done it before, nobody's done it since. I mean, the Cubs are winning now, but when they started it in 2022, they were going through a rebuilding phase, and the Cubs are fortunate. All 4 of their minor league affiliates televise their games. And so it's just most nights. I mean, sometimes I'm at the draft or Elise is doing something. I think Lance, I don't know if Lance has missed one yet. Like Ryan Sweeney will pinch hit, or we'll have different people fill in. But usually it's me and Lance and Elise. And we just it's so much fun to just sit there. And we have 4, usually it's 4 minor league games going on simultaneously. And we're trying to keep track of what's going on in all of them. The producers do a great job of keeping us up with that. And we talk about the games, and we talk about players, and we talk about things going on in the Cubs system and when guys might be up. And it's funny because I like to over prepare, Paul. I like to have all kinds of stuff. I'm ready to talk. And a lot of times during the year, we wind up I'm really big. Like we'll be doing the draft or something. I'll be really, really, really swamped. And I'll be like, man, I'm so busy. So I don't prepare as much as I want. I'll get there and be like, oh man, I hope I have enough stuff to talk about. And so we usually start, whatever. We'll be like 10 minutes in, I'll look at the clock. I'll be like, okay, hour, 50 minutes to go. And they'll look up and it'll be like 5 minutes to go. And I'll be like, we've been talking for like an hour, 45 minutes straight. Like how did this happen?
That's what I love about it. Now, obviously there's some talk swirling, as there always are, Pete Alonso and Juan Soto. If you were to give me 5 prospects that you say, no way should the Cubs even think about getting rid of these guys, who would you say would be your top 5 that you just could not get rid of?
Well, I will preface this with saying I don't think anybody should ever be untouchable, because you could always come up with a trade. Like if I tell you that PCA is untouchable and somebody wants to come give you Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman for Pete Crow Armstrong and Cade Horton, those guys aren't untouchable anymore. So the Orioles wouldn't do that. But so I don't ever feel like anybody's untouchable. There's always, just like everybody has their price, there's always some trade that you'd be willing to part with. But if you look at their system, I think there's 3 guys who jump out to me the most. Pete Crow Armstrong, who I think we'll see in center field at some point. I just think he's so good defensively. We saw a brief taste of that in the big leagues. And he's going to be one of the best defensive players in the big leagues. And I think he's going to hit. And I just think he's got dynamic personality. He's going to be right now, I feel like Dansby Swanson's kind of got his finger on the pulse of the clubhouse, or, he's kind of and Dansby, loved Dansby Swanson, loved him since college. He's more kind of a, not reserved, but more kind of cool, where Pete Crow Armstrong's fiery. And I think he's going to be the guy who's constant highlights. I saw him, Cade Horton, who I think I've been driving the Cade Horton bandwagon since they drafted him. Cade Horton's going to make an impact on the Cubs next year. And then the third guy would be Owen Casey, who they got in the Udaris trade. And I think Owen Casey might be the best power hitting prospect in the minor leagues. He hits the ball so hard at such a young age, succeeded in Double-A at age 21. He's got a chance to be special. And I do like their farm system, and it's a good farm system. But I just rattled off 2 outfielders. So if there was a trade they could make that would help the club and they had to give up Alcantara, I could do that. I like Ben Brown, but I also think there's a non-zero chance that Ben Brown, who's one of their best pitching prospects, might be a reliever. So in the right trade, I could part with Ben Brown. Matt Shaw, I really do like Matt Shaw a lot. We talked about Triantos. I think both those guys can really hit, but there's only so many infield spots. So again, in the right trade, Moises Ballesteros, is he catcher? If he's not, there's difference in his value there. So I don't know. The fourth guy, if I was ranking him, even though I have him number 9 on our midseason Cubs list, The fourth most untouchable guy to me might be Jackson Ferris. I think Jackson Ferris has a chance to be really good, but I'd also say the pitching prospects are so volatile that, again, in the right trade, if I had to part with Jackson Ferris, but I was getting somebody I knew was going to improve the team, and I wouldn't just give him away, but like, let's say you could get a young big league ready pitcher, I could part with him in the right trade. So to me, the three guys you wouldn't want to part with would be PCA, Kate Horton, and Owen Casey. But I could probably be talked into other guys in the right deal.
Love it, Jim. Where can our listeners find your work online and through social media?
Yeah, so online I'm at MLB.com and MLB Pipeline, which is an offshoot of MLB.com. And the plug I always say for our site, the great thing is it's free. None of it's behind a paywall. So all of our scouting reports, all of our rankings, all of our videos, none of it's behind a paywall. I mean, obviously we work for MLB.com. MLB.com is trying to spread the gospel of baseball. So you can read all the stuff there. And then I usually try to, I don't even know what the verb is anymore. I'm going to say tweet. I still try to tweet anytime I do something at Jim Callis MLB. And, we do, like, we're recording this this week. I've got MLB's Pipeline's inbox, which is kind of like a reader mailbag type of thing. So I solicit questions and I answer them on our website. But those are probably the two. It's off season, so you won't catch me on Marquee probably until the spring.
Well, we look forward to it, Jim, and thank you so much for jumping on and taking some time with us today.
No, it's like I love talking prospects. I love talking fall league. So anytime, Paul, it's a lot of fun.
This is the Fly the W670 podcast. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. We are now, Crawly, entering into a little CS recap, right? We've got the ALCS, the LCS going on. We've also got some good news for some Cubs looking to collect some season hardware.
Yeah, awards are starting to come up all over the place. Rawlings announced the Gold Glove nominees for 2023, and 3 Cubs will be up for the awards. Now, there's a lot of factors that everybody looks at when they do this. For me, the 2 things I look at are outs above average by Baseball Savant and defensive run saves, or DRS, by Fangraphs. Outs above average is a range-based metric of skill that shows how many outs a player has saved. So how much range, does a particular defender have? And then when you talk about a DRS, that quantifies a player's entire defensive performance by attempting to measure how many runs they saved. It takes account errors, range, outfield arm, and double playability, all of those things. Dansby Swanson has been nominated for a 3rd time, leading all shortstops in defensive runs saved with 18. He led the entire majors in outs above average with 20. So Dansby, to me, was not only one of the best shortstops defensively, he was one of the best defenders in all of baseball. Okay. The other finalists are Francisco Lindor of the Mets and Ezequiel Tovar from the Rockies. Swanson won the award in 2022 when he was with the Braves. Dustin, I got to have it. To me, that's an easy bet that Dansby takes this one.
Yeah, I think it points that way. But remember, the Cubs had a 92.5% chance to make the postseason, so you just never know.
Yeah, I mean, and he didn't have
different, of course, but
he had a couple errors in September. But I mean, this is so much defensive metric based that I'm thinking that there's no way you can kind of discount that. It's not like the MVP where if you're on a last place team versus a first place team,
right,
those things kind of factor. So we'll see what happens. Another Cub nominated was Nico Horner. Dustin, you and I both thought there was a strong chance that he would win the Golden Glove at the beginning of the season. Nico led the majors in assists with 411. He ranked 2nd among NL second basemen with 11 DRS, defensive run saves. As far as outs above average, he's 5th with 14, but he's only behind Thairo Estrada and Byron Stott in the NL. He does have tough competition going up against Bryson Stott of the Phillies and Ha-Sung Kim of the Padres. Nico has never won a Gold Glove, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but Bryson Stott's really good too, Dustin. It's going to be a tough one.
I think it's a 2-man race, but hopefully we'll see. I mean, maybe the fact that the Phillies got to where the Cubs wanted to be, maybe that's going to end up being part of it, but we'll have to wait and see.
Now, the 3rd Cubs nominee, Dustin, was a shocker.
Yes, I agree. I did not see that coming. I didn't see that coming. I knew it wasn't going to be Seiya Suzuki.
No, Ian, who won the Gold Glove in 2022, is nominated for a Gold Glove for his work in left field. He did have a career high 12 outfield assists, great. But Dustin, he was ranked 30th in outs above average with -7, and 7th in the NL with defensive run saves with 2. I went to look at last year's number when he won. When he won, he was 4th in outs above average. This year, he was 30th, and he was 1st in defensive runs saved among left fielders with 13. Where this year he wasn't even, not even close. I mean, I don't understand what they were looking at on that.
I mean, do they have to bring the guy back? I mean, is there some rule that you got to bring the guy back that won it the year before or something? I mean, that's what it seems like.
No, it feels that way, but boy, it really is. Again, if I'm Christian Yelich, I'm, and I don't like Christian Yelich the person or whatever, but I would have some issue with this. But we'll see what happens, and maybe Ian has it. One thing though, if you look there, Dustin, Cody Bellinger was not on the Gold Glove list at all. And I think,
don't tell Scotty Boras that.
I think the fact that he played both center and first affected him. So is he a Golden Glove? But they also have a new category for utility, because if you remember, you remember in 2019, like Javi Baez was playing short, second, third, and everywhere he played. So like a lot of this is based on the number of games you played as well. So I don't understand how he could be Gold Glove caliber in both center and first base. Okay, I can understand the logic if you want to say, okay, well, he didn't play primarily center and he didn't play primarily first, so not putting in those categories. But that's why you have the utility category. I'm having a hard time struggling why he wouldn't have been nominated in that one.
Yeah, that one's not crystal clear. There's no doubt about that. But I guess we'll wait and see. But I mean, there's no chance he could even finish higher than third. I'd be shocked.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. But in addition to the Rawlings Gold Glove, several Cubs were nominated for Players' Choice Awards. The Player Choice Awards are an especially distinguished honor for players as they are chosen through a vote of their peers. The winners will be announced Thursday, November 2nd. Justin Steele was nominated for the Outstanding Pitcher Award along with Zach Gallen and Blake Snell in the NL. So those 3 NL pitchers going up against each other. Cody Bellinger was nominated for Comeback Player Award along with Michael Conforto and Bryce Harper. And then finally, Ian Happ was nominated for the Marvin Miller Man of the Year Award along with Francisco Lindor and Marcus Semien. The award goes to the player who, quote, whose leadership most inspires others to higher levels of achievement. So, hey, good for Ian on that. I know he's been a union rep and done a lot of things. So I see that. So I think that those awards.
He seems like a overall regular great guy. He's a regular guest on the Bernstein and Holmes show once a week. And he's always shows up and always very good on those hits.
Yeah. So hopefully all those guys win for the Cubs. Love to see him collect some more awards. Dustin, we speculated about this before, but now Patrick Mooney, The Athletic, is reporting that Craig Breslow, Senior Vice President of Pitching and Assistant General Manager, has interviewed for Boston's head of baseball ops. Breslow has done an incredible job with the Cubs pitching infrastructure. This would be a big promotion, clearly, and his family is all located in Boston. He graduated from Yale, and he was with the Boston Red Sox front office when they won a World Series in 2013. There are a lot of candidates. That is clearly the premier job available right now.
Yeah, but there's been a lot of people who've turned that job down, which is also interesting.
Yep, we'll see what happens. I mean, sometimes you turn it down if you don't think you have a really good shot, so that way it doesn't look like you lost out on the opportunity. I think that may have something to do with it. But we'll see what happens. It's one of those dual-edged swords where you want the best for Craig and to be able to reach his goals and aspirations, but at the same time, you'd hate to lose a guy. I mean, when you take a look at a lot of what the best of what is happening in the farm system, the pitching has got to be up there. The stories this year of Assad and Justin Steele and Adbert Alzolay and all these guys, right. It's just Jordan Wicks. All these guys that came up and were able to produce, you just have all this pitching happening. You'd hate to lose that guy.
We got some bad news on Michael Fulmer. We're not going to see him next year.
Yeah, Michael Fulmer is out for the 2024 season. He was diagnosed. He had UCL surgery on his right elbow. And so, they kept saying forearm strain. And whenever you hear forearm strain, the first thing you always think of is Tommy John surgery. This isn't Tommy John surgery, but it's a similar type of process as far as the UCL is concerned. So Just absolutely bad news for the Cubs and bad news for Michael Fulmer.
Yeah, not good, but at least there's really no at least. I was going to try to say, well, at least now we know why he couldn't get the job done at the end, and hopefully it gets to extend his career by having the surgery and getting, basically a year off of pitching.
Now, some disturbing news out of the Dominican Republic. There's been a series of robberies. Hector Gomez reported 16 of the 30 MLB academies in the Dominican Republic have been robbed, including the Cubs. The Cubs have a phenomenal facility in the Dominican. It's right outside the capital city of Santo Domingo. It has 4 fields, 3 of grass, 1 of artificial turf, 4 batting cages, 8 bullpens, a weight room, and 2 locker rooms.
What were they stealing, Crawly? Like, are they stealing equipment? I mean, I'm guessing there's not like cash on hand. These aren't banks.
I mean,
what were they robbing?
Anything of value would be my guess. I would wonder if they would even, I saw some video that Hector put out of gunmen out there, maybe try to see whatever money they could get. Who knows, whatever they have of value that they may have taken, but this is clearly looks like it's like some sort of organizational job.
Yeah, as long as everybody was safe, everything else can be replaced. I'm sure they all have insurance on all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, and so that'll round out the Cub news right now. So hopefully they find the guys that did this and take care of the situation.
Well, we've got playoff baseball to review, Crawly. The LCSs are well underway. In fact, one of them is happening just as we are recording this podcast, and later tonight we've got game 4 of the ALCS.
Yeah, on our last podcast on Monday, we knew the Rangers were up 1-0 against the Astros, and the Phillies and Diamondbacks didn't even start yet. They started the night that we recorded, but now we're in full swing. The Rangers were able to take a commanding 2-0 lead by winning both games at Minute Maid Park. Framber Valdez gave up 5 singles and committed an error in the first inning. Texas was quickly up 4-0. Joseph Heim homered off Valdez in the third, and Framber's day was done, going 2.2 innings, giving up 4 runs on 7 hits. Nate Eovaldi went 6 innings and gave up 3 runs, one to Yordan Alvarez in the second and 1 to Alex Bregman in the fourth. Former Cub Aroldis Chapman gave up a home run to Alvarez, his second of the game, but the Rangers would go on to win game 2, 5-4. Now, the next game on Monday night was at Citizens Bell Ballpark. What an atmosphere, Dustin.
What an atmosphere, right? Yeah, you're right.
The Phillies crowd was riled up. It was a battle of the Zacks as Philly had Zach Wheeler taking on Arizona's Zach Gallen. Former Cub Kyle Schwarber hit a leadoff home run, 420 feet. That was Schwarber's 4th career postseason leadoff home run, breaking a tie with Derek Jeter and Jimmy Rollins for the most ever. I mean, those are 2.
Also, not only a leadoff home run, a first pitch leadoff home run.
Yes. And so after Trey Turner lined out, Bryce Harper homered on his 31st birthday, and former Cub Nick Castellanos hit a solo shot in the second to make it 3-0. Arizona tried to come back. Gerardo Perdomo hit a 2-run blast off Wheeler to make it 5-2, and Alex Thomas would hit a sac fly to make it 5-3. But that's as close as the D-backs would get. Game 2 was not close at all, Dustin. Once again, the Phillies got a solo home run in the first to put him in front. This time, Trey Turner with a home run to make it 1-0. Then in the third, Kyle Schwarber, who homered the night before, hit his second home run of the postseason to make it 2-0. It would stay 2-0. It was close until the 6th inning when the Phillies erupted for 4 runs in the 6th and 4 runs in the 7th. Kyle Schwarber would hit his second home run of the game in the 6th to make it 3-0. JT Realmuto doubled the score, 2 more to make it 5-0. And Brandon Marsh doubled to put Philadelphia up 6-0. Alex Bohm, JT Realmuto, and Nick Castellanos will make it 10-0. And that's the final score. Dustin, you said coming into the NLCS that you figured that you're only going to keep Schwarber down for so long, and now you're talking about 3 home runs in 2 games.
Yeah, we talked about in the last podcast just how miserable Cub fans could be seeing these guys in this lineup that used to be in the Cubs lineup. And then, of course, you've got a guy who named his dog Wrigley, and he never became a Cub.
Yeah, and I keep hearing, a beer league softball team is what they look like, a bunch of scruffy guys, but they absolutely are just attacking this postseason with no fear at all, and it is fun to watch right now.
Yes, it is. No doubt about it.
On Wednesday night,
Schwarber.
Yeah, on Wednesday, I'm going to the Chicago Spectacular, which is actually held in Rosemont in November, and they stopped selling tickets for Kyle Schwarber, who's scheduled to be there.
Might not be able to make it, huh? Yeah.
Well, no, he's going to be able to make it, but there's basically what they said is that Phillies tickets were priced subject to change in case they won the World Series. And then when things started getting really crazy, they just put a stop on the sale. So luckily I got my tickets before they did that. So hopefully I'll be seeing Schwarbs in early November. Well, not the second week in November, second week in November, but we'll see. On Wednesday night, the Rangers took their 7-0 postseason record back to Arlington, but that incredible streak came to an end. Max Scherzer pitched for the first time since September 12th. He was put on the IL after that start with a right teres major muscle strain. Dustin, I talked about this in segment 1, with Marcus Stroman.
Yeah.
These guys are just, they don't have anywhere to warm up, any way to ramp up. They can't go to AAA. That's done. So basically they just come in and it didn't go well. He pitched 4 innings, gave up 5 runs on 5 hits. The Astros scored 3 in the second. Jose Altuve hit a solo home run in the third. That home run puts him at 25 career postseason home runs.
Isn't that crazy? That's crazy.
That ties Manny Ramirez for the most postseason home runs. He has 10 home runs in the LCS, tied with Kyle Schwarber and Albert Pujols for second most of all time, just trailing Manny again, Manny being Manny. Rookie third baseman Josh Jung tried to get the Rangers back in this one. He hit 2 home runs, one in the 5th, two-run home runs, one in the 5th and one in the 7th, but it wasn't enough as the Astros spoiled the homecoming party for the Rangers 8-5. Like you said, the Phillies are playing tonight to try to make it a 3-0 deficit versus the Diamondbacks. Dustin, I don't know if you saw this. Tickets for Game 3 of the NLCS in Arizona are going on the resale market, the cheapest, $19.
Wow, is that embarrassing? But that's what happens when the game starts at 2-something local time during the week.
Understand that. I understand.
I mean, that wouldn't happen in Chicago, but this is Arizona. It's different.
But you got to be kidding me. I mean, when was the last time they were in the postseason? I think we said 2014 or something like that. They're back. They're 4 games from the World Series. I know it doesn't look great right now, but you're telling me that
that's definitely part of it too, right? That's definitely part of it too.
Yeah, but you can't tell me that it's worth $19. I mean, $19 is
crappy
what
fans.
you paid like a May game in Wrigley.
They're crappy fans. Fans of the Diamondbacks, they're crappy fans.
So we have the Rangers up 2-1 against Houston. Do you see this series in Houston getting tied up? I mean, in Arlington right now, getting tied up, or do you?
I think it's going to get interesting. I mean, I don't think this is going to end. I think this has a 6 or 7 game thing written all over it. I still think Texas will prevail.
Do you think Arizona gets 1 game from the Phillies?
I do. I think they get 1. I think it's really hard to sweep. But, if they don't get it today, if they don't get it in Game 3, then I think the Phillies go for blood in Game 4.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And again, you have Zach Allen and Merrill Kelly are 2 really good pitchers, but they don't really have much behind that. So, that's really tough to be down 2-0 after your aces just went. And the way that these Phillies are just slugging, I mean, good Lord.
Yes, they are. Like you said earlier, a beer league softball team. That's what they look like.
Yeah, it's been fun, though. And hopefully, like I said, I'm still hoping for a Rangers-Phillies postseason now. We'll see what happens, though.
Me too. All right, Crawly, that's a wrap. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and, of course, subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Follow on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram. Of course, we're on Twitter. You can email us, flythew670@gmail.com. And you can watch this show on YouTube by subscribing to the 670 The Score YouTube channel. Crawly, have a great weekend. We'll get back to recapping the LCSs and more Cubs news on Monday.
We'll be watching what Schwarber, Kimbrel, and Castellanos still do. And even though they're wearing a different uniform, we'll still say, Go Cubs! Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!